Hello and welcome to the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center. I am Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. I am the founder and the spiritual director. Now, as you are sitting there joining us, you may have questions, any number of questions, such as, who am I? How did I get here? Spiritually integrated arts means what exactly? What is a teaching center? Well, what is Centers for Spiritual Living? What is that? What does that even mean? Or New Thought, or religious science, or science of mind and spirit? You may have any number of questions about this specific community, about the parent organization, CSL, our philosophy, our teaching, our liberation theology. Any number of questions. Feel free to send an email. We look forward to connecting more and building our virtual community, our global community. And if you haven't connected yet on social media, feel free to do so. This is your invitation now. Also, did you know that all of our Sunday messages are archived on our YouTube channel? You can watch it anytime. Now, questions about anything, such as becoming a member. What does that mean? What does membership entail? And if you live somewhere far and already belong to a spiritual community, can you be a member of more than one? The simple answer is yes, you can. Just like you can shop at more than one grocery store, you can attend or be a member of more than one gym. We are building beloved community. So you can do both. You can be a member of both. You can be involved with both. That's what being in spiritual community means. So we welcome you. We invite you. We are so appreciative that you have found this community and that you have joined us today. We bless you. We love you. We welcome you. Live long and prosper. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of our Sunday message. Love you. Connect with you soon. Blessings. Namaste and greetings. Let us continue our conversation of the Grand Rising, that phrase that originates from the young African American men who greet each other with a grand rising. For us, what is our grand rising? The energy of it, what is it? It Today we are talking about it's a new dawn. Well, what does that even mean? And we know that the celebration of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth and legacy is approaching. What does it mean that it's a new dawn? Well, what does it say? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. served as a representation of a cultural movement toward equality, freedom, and justice for all. Though Dr. King's impact is revered by many today, he was in his time a man who was deemed to be controversial and was despised by many, including the FBI. As we experience a grand rising, let's celebrate and honor his birth and his legacy, as well as that of his contemporaries, such as Bayard Rustin, as well as our contemporaries today. The people in our own communities who are advocating for equality, freedom, and justice for all. Our modern day heroes and sheroes are likely being met with similar vitriol, just as Dr. King did and just as Bayard Rustin did. This is our opportunity to greet this new era with our love and our time and our talents and our financial support towards the people and the organizations that are right now contributing to our collective evolutionary grand rising. So, yes, it's a new day, and history is watching us right now. Dr. Holmes invites all illumination, inspiration, and realization must come through the self-knowing mind in order to manifest. All illumination, inspiration, and realization must come through the self-knowing mind. The self-knowing mind. So when we think of the self-knowing mind, what does it mean to look at yourself? What does it mean to be aware of yourself? What does it mean to have self-awareness? What does any of that mean? And so we ask the question, do I know myself? What is this self that I am knowing? Many identify themselves based upon their body and their appearance, but are they not more than just their appearance? They base themselves, who their self is, on their occupation. Is this not why we greet each other and we say, so what do you do for a living? What do I do for a living? I enjoy my life. That's what I do for a living. I breathe. And what do you mean? How many of us identify or quantify the self based upon some external things that we have accumulated for a variety of reasons? So, do I know myself? Who am I? Who is this self? What am I? What is this self? Why do I do the things that I do? What is the motivation behind any of my habits? What is it, as Dr. Holmes said, all illumination, imagination, realization, in order for it to manifest, must come through this. Okay, so what do I desire to create? And how does my desire to create A, B, and C connect to, move through my awareness of self, my self-awareness, and the awareness of self in general? It's all connected. But do I know that? Am I operating based on that? Sarah Flowers says, This light, as we understand it, is electronic. And because we possess it, we can use it for the benefit of us all. Because we possess it, because we understand how to channel it, maybe, but we don't possess it. But nonetheless, because we have access to it, we are able to use it in a way that benefits all of us, theoretically, because there are those who do not currently have access to electricity. They are currently sitting in homes that are cold and dark because electricity is not free. In nature, it is free. Lightning doesn't charge anyone to strike. The electricity in the atmosphere that Nikola Tesla spoke of, which is why he wanted to create the mechanisms that he was working on so that electricity for all would simply be. So while, yes, there are those who have claimed possession of electricity and charge based upon that possession, the general concept that we are focusing on is the idea that it is there and that it can be used to benefit all of us. It can be. What is ours to do to help move the process along so that it truly is benefiting all of us? Well, one thing is invoke the energy that these individuals evoked. Call to our presence their legacy and the energy that they stood on, aligned with the principles that they operated based upon, in order to speak truth powerfully. Not speak truth to power, because the folks that they were speaking to, they weren't really the people in power. They were operating based upon pseudo power, because pseudo power dominates, obliterates, subjugates. True power liberates. So they were speaking truth powerfully to those who were attempting to possess and own. We go back, people. They owned, kidnapped and owned, claimed ownership of people. Oh, that's right. At that time, they didn't even deem them as people. They weren't human. So how do we ensure that that which can benefit all truly benefits all? Call to mind, call to heart the energy and the legacy that has already been laid. Call to mind, call to heart, call to being the energy of the legacy that has already been laid. And live, move, and have your beingness, our beingness, collectively, individually and collectively, in a way that furthers equity, justice, and freedom for all. Until such time as it's not simply a possibility for people to have freedom, but that it's inevitable and that now everyone has it. And then the work is to maintain it, to sustain it. How do we get to the point when equity is normal? It has become normalized, and we simply sustain it. We maintain it. The health and well-being of justice, liberty for all, sustained and maintained. What is ours to do? Michael Singer offers, the natural ups and downs of life can either generate personal growth or create personal fears. Which of these dominates is completely dependent upon how we view change. Now, why would he say this? because many of us do not like change. We don't like the concept of change. We don't want to operate. Yeah, that's why. Hold on. Very interesting book. Immunity to Change, which speaks about how much we humans have an immunity. We don't like change. We don't want change. We do everything we can to stay the same old, stay the same hamster wheel, stay the same gap. So, how do we approach change? This is one reason why Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was vilified during his time, because the system, the the entire system, Jim Crow, which was basically apartheid, racial apartheid, the system and the people who did as much as they could to put that system in place did not want the system to change. That water fountain is for colored people. That's for whites and whites only. This part of the counter, whites only. Colored sit back there. They did not want change. So for them, they created personal fears about what it would mean for Black people to have equity, equality, justice, etc. So our invitation is to ask, where do I resist change? And how is my resistance to change keeping the system that is currently in place in place? Whatever that system could be regarding how domestic violence operates in the world. It could be how the current educational system fails many students today. It could be how we deny access to members of the deaf community or those in wheelchairs. It could be any system of ableism, homomisia, Islamomisia. It could be any gender bias. It could be any of the systems. How does my resistance to change keep that system in place and alive? And am I okay with that? If I'm not, then I am invited to step all in and change what is mine to change. Whatever is mine, whatever is my realm of, am I willing to change it? Am I willing to do the work? Am I willing to confront the fears? Am I willing to have the courageous conversations, the difficult and challenging conversations? Because in the grand scope of things, there are changes that we tend to avoid. What are they? Culturally, what are changes that you can identify that culturally, sociologically, systematically, we generally avoid changing? Or we'll change certain things as a performative thing, but not as an actual. And then, well, what kind of changes as an individual, what kind of changes do you tend to avoid? If we're not willing to ask these questions and actually get answers, then we're not actually ready, willing, or able, for a variety of reasons, to change. And we cannot change what we will not confront, what we will not allow ourselves to become aware of. In the same way that, how do I know myself? Who am I? What am I? Because the individual that you see in many of these images is not the same individual today. The only one that is the closest to the me of today would be the one at the bottom in the Superman shirt. Now, there are aspects of each of these, chapters of each of these, that are in the collective works of. But the various chapters, the stories within the various chapters changed over time. Had I not been willing to change, I would still be a self-defeating, self-loathing, self-abusive, individual who dwelled within the realm of suicidal ideations and all manner of, like, we could really go down the rabbit hole. And yet, for whatever reason, because the reasons changed based upon what was going on in that particular season, that particular volume, that particular chapter changed, but something was willing to confront whatever it was in order to change. Same thing here. Am I still in a space where I'm still willing to ask the questions, still willing to change, still willing to do the work to evolve, confront the fears, address the grief, have the difficult conversations with people and address situations, address the system itself? Am I willing? If not, then it's time for me to resign and retire from being a minister and an educator and several other things. It's time for me to go find a mountain cave and hibernate and live in and just recede from the world. I'm not there yet. At this present moment, I am still willing to address what needs to be addressed, to face what is mine to face, etc., even when it is extremely uncomfortable to do so. Not all change is fun and pleasant. A lot of change is uncomfortable. The change that I had to undergo regarding surgery last year, I'm still healing in various ways. Change ahead. And the funny thing is, as the signpost says, change is ahead. They're always. Change is ahead, change is right here, change is always. Always. Because as Lao Tzu said, if you realize, or once you realize, that all things change, there is nothing that you will try to hold on to. Once I know that this breath is going to change, I don't have to try to hold on to the breath anymore. I can just breathe, let it go, breathe. The moment I know that, what if I'm drawing something and change, because from blank page to page with art on there, that's change. But the moment I realize, well, there's going to be erasing time and there's going to be start over time, and I don't need to hold on to, I don't need to grasp, I don't need to become overly attached to the form or the series of. Change is inevitable. How do I engage and practice and move within it? Lao Tzu also says, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow, which in a couple of weeks we will be talking about suffering. That creates sorrow, it creates suffering. So let reality be reality. Let the moment be the moment. Let things flow as they flow. Now, that does not mean that, when you see an injustice, you're like, well, it's reality, and I'm going to let reality be reality, and I'm not going to. That is not what we're referring to. What we're saying is, when this is what it is, address it for what it is. He goes on to say, let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. In whatever way they are flowing forward, flow forward with them. Be in the flow and become the flow itself. Now, that means we have to be willing to change. The old saying, you can't step in the same river twice. Well, that we don't usually talk about it this way, but we reference, well, the river is always moving, so it's never the same river. Well, if the river is ever changing, and you also are ever changing, then the you that stepped in the river in this moment and the you that stepped in the river in this moment, both of you are different. Neither of you are the same. So the you that is stepping is not the same you twice. And the you that is stepping in the river is never the same river twice. Yeah, breathe it all in. We're already changing. Why not embrace it? Dr. King says, the ultimate measure of a man, yes, it's gender specific, but it's a specific quote that he said. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. The ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where that individual stands, where the collective stands during times of challenge and times of controversy. Racism, hate crimes, genocide occurring in various places in the world. Where do we stand? Where do you stand? Because the ultimate measure is not when we're comfortable. The ultimate measure is not when we are standing in our privilege, but the ultimate measure is where and how do we show up when we really would rather not show up? How do we speak out when we would really rather not speak out? How do we serve when we would rather not serve? How do we go out front when we would rather be in back? The ultimate measure of how we are showing up. I mean, he didn't say this, I'm saying this. The ultimate measure of how we are showing up as people in integrity, people who embody science of mind and spirit. The ultimate measure of that is, what are we doing with it? How is it benefiting not just ourselves? That's why the concept of law of attraction, green lights, parking spaces, princes, princesses, and palaces for me. That's why that is a very toxic and ineffectual practice or perspective or paradigm to hold regarding the law of attraction, because it's all about me, what I want, what I'm going to get. That's not benefiting everyone. And as, once again, you've heard me say this many times, as Fannie Lou Hamer said, none of us are free until all of us are free. None of us are liberated till all of us are liberated. None of us have equity and justice until all of us have equity and justice. The ultimate measure of any one of us within this movement, within this teaching, is how are we showing up in times of challenge and in times of controversy. Now, oftentimes we'll talk about the wrong side of history, and in the invitation to be on the right side of history. And I understand the concept, and it is very important in general. It is very important. And if I were to ask you right now, what does this even mean? What is the wrong side of history? Well, what is the right side of history? And we don't like to do right and wrong because it implies good and bad. That's a judgment. We don't like to be in judgment, so we get involved in more toxic positivity. Got to keep things good. God is good. It's all good. Woo, just be good. Choose the good side of history, not the bad. What is the wrong side of history? What does that phrase even mean? Because it invites us back into the space of controversy and challenge. Controversy and challenge. Am I willing to engage in the controversy and the challenge in order to be on the right side of history, is what we're implying. What does that mean to you? And what is the invitation that moves the pendulum, that moves the needle from the wrong side to the right side? What needs to occur in order for that to happen? Vishen Lakiani says to be extraordinary is to be connected to this spiritual aspect of yourself and to feel it move you. And when it moves you, you create, you change, you invent, and you rattle the world. To be extraordinary, to be extraordinary, to be extraordinary is to be connected. Well, if God is all there is, then technically I'm already connected. Yes. So let's language specificity. To live in a manner that is expressing one's extraordinariness is to live in a way where you know, you are aware, you are self-aware of your spiritual connection to the all that is. And in doing so, you live, move, and have your beingness as that magnificent expression. And when you do this, you feel it move. And when you feel it move, it causes you to create. It causes you to change, to evolve, to invent, and to shake up the world. How connected are you? How aware are you of the already existence, the already existing connection to the spiritual, he says spiritual aspect, but to the spiritual truth of your being? And then what does it feel like when you express it? As I mentioned earlier, part of the celebration of Dr. King, Bayard Rustin, various other contemporaries then and now, and all of the folks, is the idea of legacy. It is, if I am only living my life today, which if we're honest, there are many corporations, many businesses, many CEOs that are using natural resources today in such a way that they don't care about the children of tomorrow. They don't care that they're leaving them a polluted world, because in their mind, it's all about the money, 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 money. And they're living their lives right now as selfishly as possible, pillaging the earth to line their pocket with complete disregard for the children 3 generations from now who are inheriting landfills, toxic waste, sewage, and more. What legs? So there's the life-affirming legacy, living your life in a way that outlives you, that benefits those who come after you. A life-affirming legacy. And there is also a life-denying or non-life-affirming legacy, where you are living your life in such a way that what you are leaving others does more harm than good. What is the legacy that we are currently, first, let's go back. What is the legacy that we inherited, both the life-affirming legacy and the non-life-affirming legacy? And what are we doing with them? How are we transmuting what needs to be transmuted? How are we eradicating what needs to be eradicated? How are we doing any of the work? And what are we doing today that is leaving a legacy for tomorrow and the generations to come that betters life for them? So that women, young girls becoming women 100 years from now, are not still fighting for effective body autonomy, for equal pay. They shouldn't still be fighting for that. It shouldn't even be an issue if we do the work that we are invited to do today. People of color 100 years from now shouldn't still be fighting for equity and justice as it pertains to racism, and we should be doing the work right now to eradicate that so that there is true equity and justice. There is a true celebration of all of the shades of brownness that show up. Colorism is no longer a thing. We should be doing the work so that any LGBTQ youth who become LGBTQ adults are given full access to any medical care they need that supports their expression of their magnificence. We shouldn't still be in a world where transgender children and adults are struggling and fighting for even to have pronouns recognized, let alone medical care. What is the legacy as people who are practicing this teaching, science of mind and spirit, that we say creating a world that works for all? What is the legacy that we are currently engaged in leaving for them? We're building it now. What is it? Michelle Alexander says, if we say to ourselves that the problem of mass incarceration is just too big, it's too daunting for us to do anything about, then history will judge us harshly. We could take any problem, it doesn't have to be mass incarceration. If we say to ourselves that the problem of ending racism is just too big, it's too daunting to do anything about, then history will judge us harshly. If we say to ourselves the problem of gender equality, it's too big, it's too daunting to do anything about, history will judge us harshly. Because our ineptitude and our apathy and our acquiescence to do the work today is going to show up down the road. Imagine for a moment that a firefighter rushes to your house as it's on fire. Folks, fellow firefighters, this problem, this fire is too big and it's too daunting for us to do anything about. Let us leave. Leave. Let us do nothing. Leave the hoses attached to the trucks and do nothing. Do nothing. What the? Now, there are fires that are huge that firefighters, they know they can't put the fire out. This building is going to burn to the ground. There is no way about that. But we can contain it in a way where it minimizes the damage. We go into and save as many people and pets as possible to minimize the casualties. They still show up, even in the midst of a fire that they know they themselves, in this moment, cannot stop it. But they still do what is theirs to do. It doesn't matter how big Islamophobia is. It doesn't matter how many unhoused people are on the streets right now. It doesn't matter what neighborhoods are still redlined. None of that matters in terms of, are we still willing to step in and do the work that is ours to do today to create a world that works for all? A 1,000-mile journey is too daunting to think about, which is why Lao Tzu says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. One single step, followed by another single step. Is this not why Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, You don't need to see the whole staircase, just this one step, and then this one step, and then this one step. The journey of 1,000 miles, one single step. So, what is your 1,000 miles? And what step can you take today to reach that 1,000 miles? What is a single step that you will take today? Is that step signing up to be a member of a parent teachers organization? Is that single step placing your name on a ballot to be on a school board? Is that single step teaching your children the art and craft of forgiveness? Is that single step reaching out for an appointment with a therapist to work through your own therapeutic needs, mental health, emotional health, and well-being? What is one single step that you will take today to move you along the path of your 1,000 miles? As the new year begins, we're 2 weeks in. We are called to renew and embody the teachings of New Thought in ways that we can apply and live in principle. Are we ready for a true grand rising? Or as Dr. King said, are we ready to recapture our prophetic zeal within our individual lives and within our collective lives as a movement, as a theological movement, as a new thought liberation theology? Are we ready to recapture? Are we ready to embody? Are we ready to change? This week's affirmation, our declaration, I will say it first, and if it resonates, say it with me on the second go round. On this new day, I believe that anything is possible, and I act like I believe this. Together. On this new day, I believe that anything is possible, and I act like I believe this. And so it is. This week's questions for the Thursday night study group and for your own journaling and self-awareness practice. What traditions or rituals could you center your life on, and develop ways to honor the legacy of those who paved many a way? So in your own center and your spiritual center, are there traditions or rituals that you could begin that celebrate and honor the legacy of those who made many things possible for us today? How can your community participate in healing such things as mass incarceration, that entire system, gun violence, and more effective gun legislation? That even having the need, the whatever that is that makes someone need a gun. I'm talking about hunting. That's a completely different conversation. What makes someone want to own a gun, just in general? Racism, sexism, all of those things. What can your community do to participate in healing these things? And what about you as an individual? What are you invited to do that helps make healing not just a possibility, but it moves it into being a probability, and then it moves it into an inevitability, where healing is inevitable. These things will be healed and transformed and changed. What's the work? Number 3, what would a grand rising look like within your spiritual community, your spiritual center? And what would it look like for you as an individual? And then lastly, what are you as an individual doing in order to live a prophetic vision and to live it with zeal and vitality? Breathe. As we enter into that space of prayer, simply anchoring in and knowing that that which God is present, and that at any moment, the capital S self and lowercase s self, the realization that there's only one. And how I perceive me, myself, I, is the way that I perceive God, and vice versa. And in this perception, I am invited into a more expansive energy that invites me to do greater work, that brings this awareness to more and more people, that they too are afforded the opportunities to heal. That is my legacy. They are afforded more opportunities to have clean, fresh drinking water. That is my legacy. Not just my legacy once I have transitioned and died, but my living legacy of today. So that more people have access to nutritious food and no longer food deserts. That is my legacy today. So that all children and adults within the LGBTQ community feel safe and empowered. That is my legacy today. So that all people of color have full access to equity and justice and liberty and full emancipation, because the system that oppresses, that has oppressed, that currently oppresses, that entire system is eradicated. That is my legacy today. And so powerful is this legacy today that I already recognize the vision and the power inherent in these words, and inherent in this life, and inherent in life itself. For there is only one life, and that life is God. And that life is your life right now. Because I know that everything that I have spoken about myself, my legacy right now, it's the same truth for each and every person who is watching right now. My legacy, their legacy, your legacy, our legacy, God's legacy. One. Love, one. Compassion, one. Power and presence, one. So I honor and celebrate the awareness that people like Bayard Rustin had, and Dr. King had, and Reverend Dr. Polly Murray had. I celebrate their awareness. I celebrate their conviction. I celebrate their faith. I celebrate their legacy. I celebrate by carrying the torch of that infinite oneness that burns as me right now. I celebrate it. I honor it by living it. And the law says yes to all of it and manifests accordingly. But it only does so to the degree that I take the action that is necessary. And so I act with prophetic zeal, conviction, and power, and a world that works for all is the legacy for this time until the end of time. And so it is. Namaste, much love and appreciation. See you over in Zoom if you're joining us.